Good evening, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Vargas, and you are looking live at the nation's capital, where we are following major, fast-moving developments. In just a few moments, President Trump will host a dinner with Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman. This is the Saudi prince's first visit to the U.S. in 7 years after the murder of Washington Post reporter Jamal Khashoggi iced relations. And his return to Washington has been marked with some big deals. So far, a pledge to invest $1 trillion in the United States, a plan to sell F-35 jets to Saudi Arabia. We'll take you there live when the president starts speaking. But first,
the Senate has now passed the Epstein bill as soon as it comes over from the House.
That happened just a short time ago. The bill to release the Epstein files is now all but ready for President Trump's signature. The Senate just unanimously agreed to automatically approve the House bill that passed this afternoon. That means the moment the House bill arrives at the Senate, it's officially passed and headed to President Trump's desk. And after his 180 over the past few days, Trump says he will sign it into law. But he continues, even today, to call the whole thing a Democratic hoax.
I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert. But I guess I turned out to be right. But you know who does have? Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, who ran Harvard, was with him every single night, every single weekend. They lived together. They went to his island many times. I never did. Andrew Weissman, I hear. All these guys were friends of his. You don't even talk about those people. You just keep going on the Epstein files. And what the Epstein is a Democrat hoax.
Let's go right now to NewsNation's Joe Khalil live for us on the Capitol. So, Joe, this is all happening really fast. When can we expect the bill to reach the Senate? And then when will it then head to the Oval Office for President Trump to sign?
It's happening a lot faster than we expected, Elizabeth. So the latest is that this bill came over from the House. The Senate basically went through this procedural move that says that once the House passes the bill to the Senate, it will have already been considered passed and will immediately be moved on to the president's desk. We think the latest we've heard from Leader Thune is that as soon as tomorrow morning, that might happen. But it's amazing when you consider that last week, Thursday, not very long ago at all, the White House was trying to kill this effort altogether. They were trying to take people who had signed it, Republicans had signed on to this petition, and ask them to remove their signatures. We were expecting that it was still likely going to pass, but maybe with half of Republicans voting for it, maybe half voting against. And just in the last couple of days here, President Trump has shifted his position, basically green-lighting for all Republicans to vote for it. And now we have this near unanimous vote in the House, 427-1, and then sailing through the Senate. So, yeah, this is happening very fast today. Putting all the procedural things aside and just the unlikeliness that this bill passed at all, the pathway for it to get here was a very unlikely one. This discharge petition, as it's known, it's the mechanism for members to get around the Speaker of the House when the Speaker does not want to bring a bill forward to the floor. That is what happened with a Democrat Ro Khanna, Republican Thomas Massie. These things very rarely succeed, Elizabeth. We don't see this often. So for that to be the path this took, all of it is just very unusual, but pretty amazing how quickly and how this all happened. The stars of today, however, were these Epstein victims, these survivors, who really set the tone in the morning. Again, a press conference sharing some of their own personal testimony and their stories. A lot of it was difficult to hear. A lot of it was moving, but talking about their trauma, each individual one. Take a listen to Lisa Phillips after she found out that this is going to clear the Senate, a very different tone from the sort of somber one this morning. Take a listen here.
Just sitting in the House chamber looking down, feeling all the angst of everyone, and then waiting for that moment. We were waiting for a unanimous vote, but we fell short of one, but it's okay. It was super powerful. It was just one of the most special moments of my life to witness that and know that we were a part of it.
And the point that a lot of these survivors who we talk to emphasize to us is a lot of people have become familiar with the Epstein story, the Epstein files over the last few years. But for this group, it has been decades of trauma, decades of working through the psychological issues that many of them had to deal with from the time they were teenagers, 14, 15 years old and on. So they are looking forward to this being signed by the president, hoping the Department of Justice follows through and that some people become prosecuted if they've committed crimes related to the Epstein case.
Yeah, that was really a moving moment. All those survivors in the House chamber applauding the lawmakers as they passed the bill today, many of them crying, and many of the lawmakers on the floor of the House turning around to applaud them, who have worked so hard for so long. Joe Khalil, thank you so much. So Congress is passing the bill, and the president is promising to sign it, and then it's case closed. All the files are released, right? Well, not so fast. Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, once the reigning queen of MAGA, says this whole saga has ripped the movement apart. And she says that when the president ordered the DOJ late last week to investigate Epstein's ties with Democrats, she fears we may never actually even see all the Epstein files. Listen.
The real test will be, will the Department of Justice release the files? Or will it all remain tied up in investigations? Will the CIA release the files?
Let's get reaction now from California Republican Congressman Kevin Kiley, who voted to pass this bill earlier today. Congressman, great to have you here. So it's not just Marjorie Taylor Greene. Republican Congressman Thomas Massie also says that he suspects Trump ordered the DOJ to investigate prominent Democrats so that then the DOJ can say, we can't release all the records because there's an ongoing investigation. Are their concerns legitimate?
I honestly don't know about that. I think there were only a few people that he named. I don't know if there's even an investigation that's been started there. But what you do have is, the almost unanimous will of the House of Representatives, and I think soon to be unanimous will of the U.S. Senate. And the president has said he's going to sign the bill. And so this is going to be a duly enacted statute that has very specific requirements in terms of what needs to be released. And the statute says it has to be released within 30 days. So I think it's good news that the victims who have endured so much are finally going to get the answers they deserve.
You're one of the few Republicans who had said you would vote yes to release the Epstein files even before Trump gave us permission for Republicans to do so on Friday. Are you surprised the vote was nearly unanimous? Just one vote was a no vote?
It didn't surprise me. I think that that consensus sort of congealed within the last few days, that this was the right thing to do. I mean, for me, I have said, basically all year that I want to have the maximum level of transparency consistent with protecting the rights of the victims. And I've said for several months that I'm very inclined to support this bill. And that's exactly what I had the chance to do today. I will say that I think that this whole issue has been hyper-politicized in so many ways by so many different people, which I think is really unfortunate because we're talking about, issues of the highest sensitivity, victims who have been through so much. So I think that, this is good news that finally they'll get the answers and accountability they deserve, and then we can, move on from this.
You know better than most that House Speaker Mike Johnson spent months trying to avoid having this vote today. Today he voted yes. He held a press conference today to accuse Democrats of pushing to release the files to score political points. Take a listen.
The Democrats had every one of the Epstein files in their possession for the 4 long years of the Biden administration. The Biden Department of Justice had the files the entire time. And not a single one of the people who are so loud and animated right now, they never said anything about it for all those 4 years.
Congressman, do you think this is all political?
Well, no, I don't. I think that, what the victims are asking for is, and what they've endured is anything but political. It's an untold amount of suffering that so many people have had to endure. I do think that it's highly unfortunate that it has become politicized in so many different ways. And frankly, we've seen it on both sides. And so I think that at the end of the day, at the very least, though, now we have an overwhelming bipartisan vote. And so we can treat these issues with the seriousness that they really deserve.
After Speaker Johnson said that at that press conference, the investigative reporter who broke the story on the entire Epstein scandal. Julie K. Brown with the Miami Herald posted this on X today. The Epstein case was still an open criminal investigation during the Biden administration. They had an open grand jury, and even after Ghislaine Maxwell's conviction, the case was on appeal. Anyone in law enforcement knows you don't open your case file when it's still under appeal. Congressman, you are an attorney. Is she right? She's saying basically that when House Speaker Johnson says, why didn't they release the files during the Biden administration? She's saying the case was still ongoing. That's why.
I really don't know. I don't know when it was ongoing. I don't know when it ended. I do think that sort of the calls for this release obviously have amplified throughout the course of this last year. I think that there's plenty of blame to go around when it comes to the delays, the protracted process we've had. And frankly, for the victims, I mean, having to wake up every morning and see the name of the person, their tormentor, on the front page of every newspaper.
Right.
I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think the American people want answers, but they want them now. And so I think that we want to have a prompt resolution to this, get the material out there. People can form their own opinions. We can have the accountability where it's needed and give the victims the closure that they deserve.
And just super fast, Congressman, it looked like a very moving moment when the vote passed, and so many of you on the floor turned to applaud the victims who were up in the stands watching. Was it moving?
Yeah, I think that for, people who have, been through so much, just unimaginable, unspeakable things, to have this moment where, all of the politics were, at least for a moment, put aside, and we all were able to come together in support of them, I think that was, a nice thing.
Okay, Congressman Kevin Kiley, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Jeffrey Epstein may not be around anymore to answer questions about his sordid sexual scandal and who knew what when. But there is one person who seemingly has all the answers, and that would be Jeffrey Epstein's longtime associate, Ghislaine Maxwell. She is currently serving 20 years for trafficking underage girls to the late sex offender. Maxwell's doing this at a cushy minimum security prison in Texas known as Club Fed. She was previously at a prison in Florida where she was reportedly miserable, eating moldy food. But now she's reportedly a lot happier, playing with puppies and getting special meals delivered to her, even getting as much toilet paper as she wants. Prison rules limit inmates to 2 rolls a week. We know all this because the prison staff is apparently now dishing the dirt to the media and leaking her emails to Congress. Joining me now is Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney, Arthur Adalia. Thank you so much, Arthur, for joining us. So have you spoken to Ghislaine about what's happening in Congress? I mean, it would be only a call late today because it all happened today. But as you watch this bill come close to being passed, and then today, of course, being passed, and now on its way to the president's desk.
How are you? And it's great to be back on with you. No, I haven't spoken to Ghislaine. Number 2, I'm one of several lawyers who are representing her. My law firm represented her in that appeal of which you were just speaking of in the Second Circuit here in New York in the federal court. I don't believe Ghislaine is receiving any more special treatment than anyone else is in there. We
That's not what the prison staff is saying.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, I've been doing this a long time, and the prison staff says a lot of things to a lot of people that are not accurate. Prison staff, and I'm going to speak in sweeping generalities, are also the people who sneak the cell phones into the prisons that shouldn't be there, sneak the drugs into the prisons that shouldn't be there. That may be a fraction of the prison staffers, but don't believe everything you hear. Ghislaine was in a facility in Florida where I visited her, and I got in trouble for, I don't know, I forget if I had a paper clip or something that I wasn't supposed to have, and I was reprimanded. She's in a federal prison camp. Just so you know, there are camps, and that's what they are. There's just less restrictions. But you can't leave. There are all kinds of rules. They tell you when you wake up. They tell you when you go to sleep. They tell you what you're eating. So there's what the congressman just said about the politicization of this case could not be any more accurate. I know that we're going to talk about the victims. I believe 150 people have gotten $121 million from the Epstein Victims Fund. It's not like they have gone unnoticed. It's not like they have gone unaccounted for. You have to understand, I have a very bad taste in my mouth because I represented Alan Dershowitz, where Virginia Giuffre accused him of horrible, horrible, horrible things to one of the greatest lawyers this country, this world has ever known, a 50-year professor at Harvard University, and she destroyed him and his reputation only to then say, I may have made a mistake. The 6 different times I said he raped me in 6 different locations, it wasn't him. Sorry
right,
about
but
that.
That's just, Arthur, that's one victim. I mean,
but she's been the face. Virginia Giuffre has been the face.
We are now seeing the faces of dozens and dozens, perhaps hundreds of other victims. Don't they deserve justice?
But they've got millions of dollars.
But
they've got millions of dollars.
So the people who abuse them get to go free and live their lives, and I mean, that's not the way it works. We don't pay people off.
The person who abused them allegedly is dead, right? They had to say that Jeffrey Epstein.
No, they say they were
them.
trafficked by Epstein to other people. Don't those men deserve to be held accountable?
Well, yes, they do. But the congressman is correct. There's crimes like this going on all over the world, especially all over the country. Right here in New York State, the only reason why this is such a hot button issue, why this particular guy is such a hot button guy, number one is because of Trump. Number two is because then you want to talk about Bill Clinton and Al Gore and all these other names that get bandied about. Here's what President Trump is correct in being cautious about. Anyone whose name gets associated with Jeffrey Epstein gets this black mark on them, gets this like, oh, he's a bad person because he knew Epstein. Epstein knew a lot of people. He was very rich. He had planes, he had islands, and there were a lot of people who spent time with Jeffrey Epstein who did absolutely nothing wrong. But once their name is now associated with him, now they're a bad person. And
that shouldn't mean that the people who might have done something criminal should not still be held criminally responsible. I do want to ask you about these emails between Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell that were released by Democrats last week. The two are discussing President Trump being at Epstein's house. Epstein writes to Maxwell, quote, "That dog hasn't barked. Giuffre spent hours at my house with him," meaning Trump. Maxwell responds, "I've been thinking about that." But she's on tape telling Trump's deputy attorney general that Trump was never at Epstein's house. Did she lie to the attorney general?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I've never spoken to Ghislaine about this. I do know that we do know that the deceased Virginia Giuffre has been caught in several lies. We do know Giuffre was interviewed by the Southern District of New York to testify in Ghislaine's trial against Ghislaine, and they found her so uncredible,
right? But this
so
isn't
unbelievable that they never called her as a witness.
We're not talking about Virginia Giuffre's credibility. She's
but
dead
we are,
now
to some degree.
No, we're talking about Ghislaine Maxwell's credibility because she's in an email saying, "I've been thinking about the fact that Trump was at your house." And then she's on tape saying, "Nope, Trump was never at Epstein's house." Which one is true?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know the answer to that question.
And because obviously the concern is she might be saying whatever Todd Blanche, there is the deputy AG, wants to hear in order to help President Trump and in order to get a pardon or a commutation. Is she applying for a commutation or a pardon?
If not through my office, if Ghislaine Maxwell had the keys to the prison, where she was, where I visited her in Tallahassee, and you know what I mean when I say the keys to the prison, any human being in her condition, under her conditions, would use those keys. She was abused during her trial period, abused. She didn't sleep for days. That's on the record. She wasn't fed for days in the United States of America, in New York City.
So you're saying she would say anything to get out of there?
She was falling asleep at the table. She was abused. If Sammy the Bull Gravano decided to testify against John Gotti to get himself out of prison, I would think that someone like Ghislaine Maxwell, if she had the goods on all these people that everyone thinks she would, her self-preservation instincts would kick in, and she would do what needs to be done. But maybe, as she has said, these are all fairy tales. Jeffrey Epstein is dead, and he can't defend himself. And if I defend myself, I get thrown into solitary confinement. So maybe this has become some political hot potato that's been going on for years, and basically has taken on a whole life of its own.
Arthur Idella, thank you. So you didn't answer. Is she applying for a commutation? Is she preparing?
I said not through my office.
Not through your office. Okay. All right. Arthur, thank you. I appreciate you coming on and answering all the questions.
It was a pleasure.
All right. Take care. Coming up for us, the East Room dinner with the Saudi Crown Prince is about to begin. We're going to take you there live when the president speaks. Plus, we'll have part 2 of my wide-ranging conversation with best-selling author Scott Galloway. He explains why Joe Rogan and so many other so-called podcast bros were so influential in getting President Trump elected. And then later, a major update to a story that has the state of California in the hot seat. New details from our investigation into its handling of the deadly Palisades fire. Any moment now, President Trump and the First Lady will welcome Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to the East Room of the White House for an elaborate dinner. It's not technically a state dinner because the Crown Prince is not the official head of state, but it is just as lavish as a state dinner. The meal caps off a day of ceremonies, meetings, and photo ops between the two leaders. This is not your average diplomatic shindig. The Saudi princes visiting here for the very first time since the murder of Washington Post reporter Jamal Khashoggi. The CIA found the prince likely ordered the killing. President Trump and the Crown Prince were asked about the murder in the Oval Office earlier today.
You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
NewsNation White House correspondent Kelly Meyer joins us now. Kelly, what are we expecting to see at the dinner tonight? Usually there's a guest list and a menu, a whole itinerary released, and we've had no details on this. Who's there?
Yeah, Elizabeth, we are still waiting. We just ran back to ask the press team here at the White House about the guest list, about the menu. We're still waiting for those details, and the press themselves are still waiting to be allowed back to the East Room where the dinner is happening here tonight. All we know is it's going to be elaborate, Elizabeth. We know, and we saw there the Saudi Crown Prince arriving a short time ago. The red carpet, you'll see, still rolled out from earlier, and the First Lady and President Trump greeting him there. The First Lady in a long absinthe green strapless gown from Elie Saab, around $3,000 for that dress on Neiman Marcus we saw. They're heading in there to the event. On the guest list, what we know so far, Elizabeth, Cristiano Ronaldo, the soccer star, will be there, along with Elon Musk back at the White House. But we do know the president's going to be toasting to those deals that the White House says he was able to ink today, including the Saudi investment in the U.S. growing from $600 billion to $1 trillion, as well as the president selling the Saudis those F-35s and 300 American tanks. So we're waiting for this dinner to get underway now. We are expecting to hear from the president at the top of this with remarks, and then we are expecting this to go into the evening with the potential performance later on in the night, Elizabeth.
But we don't know who. So interesting. Kelly Meyer from the White House, thank you so much. Coming up for us, the crisis of the American male. What is driving the despair for men in this country, whether it's personal or political? I talk about it all with Scott Galloway in part 2 of our interview. Plus, don't miss his take on the Epstein files and the president's feud with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Young men in America are in trouble. Studies show that they are much lonelier, more isolated than women, with fewer meaningful relationships or social connections. They also lag behind in college enrollment and are much more likely to be diagnosed with a behavioral problem. Add to that a steady decline in employment and a tough job market, and you got a lot of guys sitting on the couch wondering what to do with their lives, maybe even ending them, because men are much more likely to die by suicide than women. It's all the subject of a new book by NYU professor Scott Galloway called Notes on Being a Man. I had the chance to talk to him about it. Here's part 2 of our wide-ranging discussion. How big a role does social media play in all of this? The governor of Utah, after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, called social media a cancer on society. This young man who killed Charlie spent endless hours in his home or in his basement playing video games, then got a rifle. You warn that too many young men are simply isolating themselves. You even actually said about AI that the greatest threat of AI, hands down, in my view, is loneliness, because AI, like social media, keeps you isolated. And somehow you're in a relationship with technology and something that isn't even real.
Yeah, I think the biggest threat of AI is not self-healing weapons or that become sentient, but we're essentially, unfortunately, 40% of the S&P by market value is 10 companies whose primary job is to convince you to spend more and more time. Every minute they can get you from your regular life to on this is tens of billions of dollars in incremental shareholder value. And the way they do that is by tapping into an immature brain, especially young people, especially young men who crave dopa. And the net effect is the following. We have attached our economy's prosperity to an objective of evolving a new species of asocial and asexual males. The amount of time 20 to 30-year-old males spend outside is now less than prison inmates. And you were talking about Charlie Kirk. As we're arguing over the fonts on a shell casing to try and blame one side or the other, the reality is it's a hollow argument. Most of these men are not actually that politically engaged. What they are is all young men, from the person who killed Kennedy to to Abraham Lincoln. They're young men who lack purpose, aren't attaching to relationships. And then most recently, all of these political shooters are extremely online. And then the kind of kickers, they have access to guns. But this argument over political ideology is a hollow argument. There's just too many men not attaching to relationships. And we're mammals. We go crazy without relationships. Put an orc in a tank alone, see what happens. Worst thing you can do to a human is solitary confinement. People would much rather be in dangerous situations than be put in solitary confinement in prisons. And then leave your dog alone and see what happens without another dog. And I worry that we're essentially using, they have this indomitable foe of big tech, trying to convince them they can have a reasonable facsimile of life online, and they wake up without skills, without relationships, anxious, obese, and we're just in the most unstable, violent societies in the world, Elizabeth, have one thing in common, and that's a disproportionate amount of young men with a lack of economic or romantic possibilities. They have been the most dangerous group of people in history, constantly weaponized, and constantly, quite frankly, prone to nationalist content.
Right. Well, obviously, many political leaders are taking note of this. Governor Gavin Newsom of California recently issued an executive order calling on the state to, quote, confront California's growing crisis of connection and opportunity for men and boys. Former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who also is thinking about running for president, wrote an op-ed about young men saying, quote, you don't have to be an incel to believe that the system is fundamentally broken and rigged against your success. Incels obviously being disaffected, often angry young men. Incel is short for involuntarily celibate.
Yeah, and also Governor Moore of Maryland has announced that the focus of administration and his top priority was to focus on the struggles of young men and boys. Elizabeth, if he'd said that 5 years ago, I can't imagine the blowback he would have received. When I started talking about this 5 years ago, the dialogue was so much less productive, and the data is so overwhelming. I mean, to the far right's credit, they recognized the problem first. The problem was their solution was to take women and non-whites back to the 50s, and that they conflate or inversely correlate the ascent with women as the cause for men's descent.
Of their misery and their failure, yeah.
That's just not true. That's like blaming immigrants for your economic problems. That's when I know when I talk to a young man that come off the tracks. If it wasn't for women in factories, we wouldn't have won World War II. If it wasn't women entering the workforce in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, our economy, we'd be a second-tier economy. And we should be celebrating our mothers and our sisters' economic progress. It's been huge to the economic growth and well-being of America. But there's just the notion that all of a sudden there are government programs actually focusing on these individuals is really remarkable, because the gag reflex that you got 5 years ago when we talked about this was understandable. Because if you look at from 1945 to 2000, America registered a third of the economic growth globally, which is 5% of the population. We had 6 times the prosperity. And then with that incredible prosperity, we crammed it into the 1/3 of the population that was white, male, and heterosexual. I got unfair advantage. There's no denying I got unfair advantage. The issue is we're now holding a 19-year-old accountable for my unfair advantage. And I think the answer then is that men of my generation have a debt. One, to promote policies that lift up young people economically. The economic damage done to the younger generations has had a disproportionately negative effect on men. I think if we put more money in young people's pockets, it'll have a disproportionately positive impact on men. And also, men my age need to step up. There are 3 times as many women applying to be big sisters of New York as there are men applying to be big brothers. If we want better men, we need to be better men, but we have a debt. And what I would say to everyone out there is I understand your gag reflex when I talk about this. I've had a 3,000-year head start, but should we be holding a 19-year-old male accountable for should he be paying the penalty for my unfair advantage?
Charlie Kirk and a whole constellation of bro podcasters are out there trying to reach these young men, people like Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, Tim Dillon. And young men have turned out to be a potent political force at times. The young men helped propel Trump back into office. 56% of men under 30 voted for Trump. Is it because they thought Trump would make things better for them? Because then we see the New York City mayoral election and young men turned out in force for a Democratic socialist named Zoran Mamdani.
So I believe that the problem of young men, and granted, I'm a hammer, so everything I see is a nail, but I think struggling young men is the reason that we elected Trump. And if you look at the groups that pivoted hardest from blue to red, 2020 to 2024, first was Latinos. I don't think we can take a lot from that because it's even weird we categorize it as one community because there's so much disparity.
There's so much disparity.
Within that community. The second group was young people. And when you're under the age of 30 and you're not doing well, you just want change. But the most interesting group is the third hardest pivot was from women aged 45 to 64. And my thesis, Elizabeth, is that's their mothers. Because in the United States,
there's still young men.
In the United States, there's a disproportionate amount of women who will still vote for who they perceive is in the best interest of their husbands and their sons. And if your son is in the basement playing video games and vaping, you don't care about territorial sovereignty in Ukraine or transgender rights. So Mamdani was elected for the same reason Trump was. And that is if you're not doing well, you just want change. And Biden and Cuomo both represented the status quo. So they're willing to vote for a chaos candidate, insurrection or not, I don't care. But also Trump, to his credit, flew right into the manosphere. And by going on Rogan, 55 million views. Harris, to match that exposure, would have had to have gone on CNN, MSNBC, and Fox every night for 3 hours for 2 weeks. If she had taken the bus to Austin, it would have been worth her time.
Yeah. We're seeing, finally, a lot of cracks right now in both parties. There's a divide in the Democratic Party between the progressives like Mamdani and moderates like the newly elected governors of Virginia and New Jersey. But we're also seeing some cracks in Trump's big MAGA coalition, this epic fallout that's happening right now between President Trump and Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is ordinarily one of his most ardent and enthusiastic supporters. What do you think is happening? Is there some conclusion, or is it just this is what happens? You know, people who are together for 1 year in one election end up falling apart.
I do think that Marjorie Taylor Greene is a bit of a canary in the coal mine, or a canard of what is. I was shocked to see her come out as aggressively. And I think she's done some polling.
On two things, the economy and Epstein. She's the one who was saying at the very beginning, these health care insurance premiums are dangerous, and this is going to hurt a lot of Republicans in the country. We need to do something.
Yeah, and I didn't think the Democrats should have caved on the shutdown, but they have a solid argument, and that is they picked an issue that actually will impact Republicans more. And they've really highlighted the fact that, about 14 million Americans are about to lose their health insurance, and millions are going to see their rates skyrocket. I think if you look at a survey of the happiest nations in the world, 6 of 10 are in Northern Europe. And happiness, we tend to believe in America, it's about what you can get. Happiness also, though, is about a fear from anxiety about things being taken away from you. And essentially in Denmark, if your wife is diagnosed with lung cancer, it doesn't mean you're going bankrupt. Whereas in the US, there's a 1 in 3 chance that that'll happen when your wife is diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. 40% of American households have medical debt. Just the amount of anxiety people are feeling and the shame. You know, you imagine you got a 17-year-old daughter and you have to borrow money for her to fix her root canal. I mean, this is just the anxiety I think Americans are feeling economically is pretty severe, and the Democrats focused on that. And also the Epstein files, there's just no getting around it. The president, he looks, I jokingly say my 5-year-old once drew on the wall, and the moment he realized he spelled out his own name, he knew he just looked very guilty. I feel like Trump could not be acting more guilty because people have forgiven him for a lot. And so he's acting like there's something really, really ugly in here. And I think for the first time, Republicans are seeing political advantage in taking him on, whereas before it was radioactive to get anywhere near the third rail of challenging the president. It feels like his grip on power is beginning to slip.
We'll see. I don't know. She also sounds like she wants to make up. And it's an interesting moment, though. I agree with you. And it will be very telling what happens in the coming weeks. Scott Galloway, always a pleasure to talk to you. Congratulations on the book, Notes on Being a Man. It's a signed reading to both my sons who are young men. Really, really great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Congrats on all your success.
Thank you, Scott. All right, we have a live look at the White House where we see President Trump just walking in with the Saudi Crown Prince. You can see First Lady Melania Trump there. President Trump is about to make his remarks. Let's listen in as the crowd seats themselves. It's quite a dinner there. We've spotted Elon Musk in attendance. He's speaking. Let's listen.
And it is indeed my honor to welcome to the White House a great friend and a man of leadership, vision, courage, and strength, His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And we had a big day today, a very big day for both countries. We've gotten to know each other well over the years, and he has become a true partner for peace and prosperity for our countries and for the world and for peace in the Middle East, which was a crowning achievement for both of us. And I just want to say that Crown Prince Mohammed, we're delighted to have you with us at the White House. Very special, very, very special. I'd like to also express my gratitude to our wonderful First Lady for organizing this beautiful evening. She worked hard on it. Thank you very much, Melania. Thank you. And we're pleased to be joined as well by Vice President J.D. Vance and his magnificent wife, Usha. Thank you. Thank you, J.D. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and his wife, Kelly. Thank you, Mike, wherever you may be. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Princess Rima. Thank you, Princess Rima. Such an incredible representative of your country. And you really are. We really appreciate it. Great job you do. And members of the Saudi delegation, we want to thank you very much for being with us. We spent a lot of time with you today in the cabinet. You're extremely good negotiators, that I can tell you. So I want to thank you. And we have so many other unbelievable dignitaries. I won't talk too much about you because we'll be here all night. This room is loaded up with the biggest leaders in the world, business, sports. You know, my son is a big fan of Ronaldo, wherever Ronaldo is here. We're Ronaldo. And Barron got to meet him, and I think he respects his father a little bit more now, just the fact that I introduced you. So I just want to thank you both for being here. Thank you very much. Really an honor. But I want to thank everybody because you have the biggest business leaders in the world. You have the biggest leaders politically anywhere in the world. And I think it's a group that maybe to this extent has never come together quite like this. I only wish we had about 2,000 more seats. We would have filled every one of them 2 times over. but very soon you'll be having that, and we'll have to do another one in about 2 years from now. But we really do. We appreciate it very much. It's a special privilege to welcome His Royal Highness to Washington this year as we mark the 80th anniversary of the first meeting between U.S. President and a Saudi king. 8 decades ago in 1945, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt met with the Crown Prince's own grandfather, the founder of the Saudi Arabian incredible country, and that was King Abdul Aziz on the deck of the U.S. Navy cruiser, and a beautiful one at that. It has become known for that meeting all over the world. The two became immediate and warm friends, and in fact, when we were walking down the Presidential Walk of Fame today, I said, so which one, other than Trump, of course, because Trump absolutely is number one in this category, meaning friend to Saudi Arabia. I said, which is the greatest of the president's friends of Saudi Arabia? And I think you said, very truly, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Now, he's a Democrat, so I don't know. But I understood it, and it's true. He was a great friend, and right now you have the best friend you've ever had. But ever since, our countries have been enduring partners, and together this evening, we're making that partnership closer and stronger than ever before. And we've never had the relationship, our countries, like this. We had four great years, but things happened today, and documents were signed, and we went through a lot during the first 9 months. And we have a very different Middle East than we had when I first came into office, like I would say day and night. As I saw during my wonderful visit to the kingdom in May, with the Crown Prince's help, Saudi Arabia has made extraordinary strides and grown into an economic engine and really a modern day miracle, an amazing transformation, and all for the good. This opening up of the new avenues of cooperation between the United States and Saudi Arabia is really unprecedented. And on that trip, Saudi Arabia announced that it will invest an incredible $600 billion. That means jobs. That means jobs. It's also good for your companies, but I'm only interested in the jobs for your country. I'm not interested in the profits, but I guess the profits are there too. But $600 billion in the United States. And today I said, any way you can up that? And he said, I am going to up that to $1 trillion. So he's investing $1 trillion into the United States. And when I was in Saudi Arabia, he looked at me, and I've used his name all over the place because he was the first to say it, but a lot of people have said it after. He said, you know, 1 year ago, we thought your country was dead. And now you have the hottest country anywhere in the world. We are the hottest country anywhere in the world right now. So I want to thank you for giving me one of the most effective lines that I have. And I quote you, and I quote some others, but I always put you up at top. But many people have said that. This week, we're also signing exciting agreements on civil nuclear energy, critical minerals, and artificial intelligence, numbers that nobody's ever heard of before. And Jensen, I want to thank you. You had a great meeting of NVIDIA, wherever you may be. And I want to thank Tim Cook and Apple for all of the money that you're investing in the United States. They're both investing $600 billion, and we have numerous other companies in the room that are likewise investing large sums because they believe in what we are doing and what's taken place, this miracle that's taken place in the USA. Together, these will come together. We're going to have support the many thousands of American jobs that have been created and help solidify the USA and the world leader. We're really now by far the world leader in technology, and nobody even questions it. Advanced manufacturing and other vital industries. They were saying 2-3 years ago, when the country was really losing business, not gaining business, that we'll never be manufacturers again. We'll never be doing any of these businesses again that are coming back to us in record numbers. AI plants, but maybe even most importantly, in a sense, the auto plants. They're all pouring back into the United States. And I have to say, because of tariffs, I'll also say because of November 5th, the election. But because of the tariffs, they're coming back. We have the head of Ford, we have the head of General Motors in the room, and their stock has gone through the roof because what I did with tariffs last week on certain kinds of vehicles, I won't get into it. It's called mid-sized trucks and large trucks. So I wanted to get into it because their stock went through the roof. and they were very happy. They did not really a hell of a lot of work. I gave it to them at their request, and for that, they get a big fat salary. But more importantly, they create jobs all over the country. It's been amazing. And the business you've gotten in the midsize and the large trucks because of what we did with tariffs is incredible. It's incredible. So I congratulate both companies, and thank you both for being here very much. And as we announced in May, Saudi Arabia is also making an enormous commitment to building up its own defense capabilities with the largest arms purchase in history, nearly $142 billion worth of American military equipment and services. And as I've said many times, and we've demonstrated just a short while ago, but quite a bit, we make the best military equipment in the world by far. We make the best jets, the best missiles. We make the best military equipment in the world. There's nothing even close. But this will mark and make both of our nations safer and cement the kingdom's role as a key force for stability and security in the Middle East. And they are, I think right now, I can say with what we did with our beautiful B-2 bombers going in and obliterating a very serious nuclear threat, which would have taken place in about a month from that date. They were ready to go. They're not ready to go anymore. They'd like very much to make a deal with us, and they call us, and we'll end up probably doing that. That's Iran. But when you really think about it, Your Majesty, I think that this is the best in terms of safety. Saudi Arabia has never been as safe as it is right now. You always had a little cloud over your head, and sometimes that cloud was very big. That cloud is not there anymore, and we want to keep it that way. So that's why tonight I'm pleased to announce that we're taking our military cooperation to even greater heights by formally designating Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally, which is something that is very important to them. And I'm just telling you now for the first time because I wanted to keep a little secret for tonight. I just heard him say, "Oh, that's nice." That's another point you won today. And signing a historic strategic defense agreement, which we just signed a little while ago. So congratulations. It's our great honor. A stronger and more capable alliance will advance the interests of both countries, and it will serve the highest interest of peace, and we all share in peace, and we've never had and been so close to truly everlasting peace in the Middle East. All my life I've heard, oh, peace in the Middle East, but it'll never happen. We did it. Now we have to make sure it matures properly and is really as strong as we think it can be, but we've gotten all good signals. I want to just thank you for all the help, too. I want to thank the Crown Prince for the role he played in the transformational peace deal that was achieved last month, and so many of the other things that happened to end the war in Gaza. Gaza, while it looks a little bit messy, it has for many, many years, I will tell you, many decades, but it's getting very close to being perfected. And people are shocked. And even the great experts that have gone around criticizing badly every country and every president and everything, they're all saying that what's taking place in the Middle East is a miracle. They're just calling it a miracle, and we're going to make it a miracle, and we're very close to doing that. But as you know, all of the living hostages were returned to their families. We got all 20 out of 20. And likewise, this sounds terrible, but the parents of the dead people, young men, mostly young men, almost all young men, they wanted those bodies back as much as the parents of the living. The parents of the living would do anything to get their boy back, and they got him back. And the parents of the dead wanted them just as much. It almost seemed as though they wanted them more. And today, through the efforts of Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner and Marco Rubio and everybody worked together. We worked so hard together. 2 more bodies were brought back, and we're up to almost the full count. I think we're too short right now, and a lot of work has been done by Hamas. And a lot of people said they wouldn't be doing that, but they did do it. And the bodies have been delivered to the families, to the mothers, to the fathers, and at least they can be in peace. It's amazing. It was a miserable period of time. We have 2 more to go, and I think we'll be getting them also. Not easy. That was not easy. Not an easy situation. I've met with many of those parents, and what a time they've had. But we also want to thank all of the people living in Gaza, the residents of Gaza, and they've, as you know, begun to move back to their homes, and a lot more safety. They said today, a lot more safety than they've ever had before.
All right. President Trump has been speaking at this state-like dinner. It's not actually a state dinner because MBS is not an official head of state, but the Crown Prince from Saudi Arabia is having a very lavish dinner tonight at the White House with lots of attendees, including Elon Musk, David Ellison, head of Paramount, Tim Cook, president of Apple, the heads of Ford and GM, the head of Blackstone. We have Cristiano Ronaldo, the world's most famous superstar, along with, obviously, Elon Musk, the world's richest man. And just moments ago, President Trump announced that he has designated Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO U.S. ally and has signed a strategic defense agreement with Saudi Arabia. We will have more details on that as they develop. In the meantime, that does it for us. It's time now for Chris Cuomo, and Chris will take it away.